All right, well, welcome to episode 8 in season 2 of C.A.R.s, Coffee and Christ. It's the weekly podcast here with our team at Automotive Royale here in Mounds, and I'm your host, Ross Turner. I serve as our chaplain and also the podcast host here. So in today's episode, we've had 2 or 3 episodes that we've been talking more about the spiritual life, but today we're going to focus a little bit more on vehicles. And we thought with winter ending and spring starting, at least right around the corner, we thought it'd be a good time to discuss a little bit about maintenance on the vehicles and what it looks like to do, I think, regular maintenance and also maybe some seasonal maintenance and the whys, not just the what, of what we're going to be doing there. And then also we, of course, want to, like we've typically done in the past, we want to talk about some parallels about how that relates to the spiritual life and how that relates to life with God, regular and seasonal maintenance in our lives with the Lord as well. So we'll talk about parallels today between vehicle maintenance and spiritual maintenance. So with me today in episode 8, we have Ray Lawson, our business manager here at C.A.R.s. We have J.J. Clark with us, who works in tech work and also works with our vehicles. And we thank you for Joshua King being here, our co-owner and CEO, with us as well. And thank you guys for getting up this morning and joining us for our discussion today. So I thought we'd start with something simple for all of us. Maybe the intro question for us is, coming out of winter, I mean, what's really the responsible thing we should be doing? With our vehicles, how should we be taking care of them in a way that starts to prepare ourselves for the rest of the year? So anyone want to start us today with just basic maintenance things coming out of the winter, going into the spring? Who wants to start?
Well, hey, Ray, aren't you doing something like that right now? Do you winterize or something?
Yeah, but that's on a motorhome, but same thing.
That's hysterical.
So those things are a nightmare. So avoid them at all costs. Mm-hmm. But anyway,
that was a free one. Right?
Yes, I wish. But no, I mean, there's, as you're moving from season to season. I mean, the most important thing, man, is mainly just inspection. Yeah. Just taking the time to look things over, look at your fluid levels, get under the hood, just make sure, see if there's anything that doesn't look the way that it should look. Mm-hmm. Doesn't smell the way it should smell. I mean, it's kind of, if you've been around cars a little bit or not, if something seems, if it has a smell, a sweet smell or a strong odor of something burning, obviously you want to take a look at it. One thing that a lot of people don't really think about going from winter into spring, you drive your cars on a daily basis, you bring them home and you park them, and during the cold months, there's critters that try to find ways to warm up each and every night. A lot of them will crawl right up into the engine compartment of your vehicle and start building nests and all kinds of different things, even if it's just sitting overnight. So just basically a good inspection is typically what you're looking at to make sure that your fluids are topped off, that kind of thing. So transitioning from one to the other. But it's overall maintenance. A lot of that is dictated by manufacturer recommendations.
Yeah.
So,
that's great, Ray.
From season to season, a good inspection is probably your best bet.
Yeah, that's great.
I'll kind of focus on water, right?
Yeah.
So in the winter, you've got snow on the roads, which, when salt comes out in the salt trucks, just highly corrosive to vehicles for the longevity. So when you're thinking about long term, over time, especially if you're up north, you deal with this a lot more. Probably don't even know what we're talking about if you're in the tip of Florida, but up north, you have a lot of salt on the road. So it's not bad to run it through a car wash that will allow you to get all that salt off. So when it has an undersprayer, we also have one that we use and we kind of roll it underneath cars with a pressure washer and just get all the grime of salt off the vehicle and allow it to last as long as it can. If you look at old cars that we restore, oh man, it's the undercarriage that really tells the story of the vehicle, the maintenance, and how people, you can really tell when a vehicle's been cared for by the owner, because these types of things, they get the salt off the vehicle as they're transitioning. The other is, as you're looking forward to, we're about to be in rainy season, and two big things for safety is, your lights and your wipers, just simple things like changing your wipers right before you hit into the rainy season of April and May, and looking at, maybe a restoration on your headlights, take a look at them. If they look like yellow, foggy, things like that. There's some real simple, inexpensive kits out there that you can get, and they'll just restore your headlights. You can also do that at a lot of places like, Walmart or Costco or one of your club memberships. They'll do some of that time, sometimes those kind of things. And then also, in the winter season, you'll get that, TPMS sensor that goes off about tire pressures and things like that. Just, basic stuff. Do a basic once over on the whole thing. It's a really good time because, spring and summer brings a lot of the fun, right? Yeah. Like if we do camping a lot, so I check all the lugs. I make sure that I'm ready for the things we're about to do. Make sure we've gone through the proper maintenance, the fluids, the oil change. Just a good time to do a once over on the vehicle with the basics. That'll go a long way. And caring for and loving for your vehicle, getting the grime and salt off the paint also on the sides. I mean, all of that is really going to help you not do a lot of damage to your vehicle, just due to the harshness of winter. So
that's great. I think, like you're saying, you're getting out of a season where you're not doing a whole lot of maintenance, right? You're not looking at your vehicle very much. It's snowing, it's cold, you're just thankful it's starting, whatever. And the reality is you're not giving a whole lot of investment to it. It's investing in you, right? And so it's time to kind of start thinking about how can I invest in it and start to care for it, especially since I'm going to be driving it probably even more now in the spring and in the summer. So there is a sense of like inspection, investigation, investment. These things need to kind of happen in this kind of turnover season as well. I thought it'd be good to kind of then follow up by saying, hey, what's ultimately the purpose of maintenance? What are we trying to do and what are we trying to avoid? What happens when we neglect basic maintenance? I mean, we're calling it basic. So again, a lot of people do some of these things on their own. So what happens when we neglect this, and what's the purpose of doing it as well? I mean, again, like you said, Josh, the purpose is to drive and have fun with the vehicle, right? But what happens when we neglect it as well? And don't do the things, don't do the inspection. Don't look at the vehicle when it's been cold, right? What happens, especially, I've got tons of stories of, not me, but friends be like, then the third light came on and this came on. Like, okay, why are you not caring for the vehicle, all right? So again, what are we trying to not just do with the vehicle, but what are we trying to avoid with the vehicle as well? What do you guys think about that?
Trying to avoid future breakdown.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, we don't, maintain preventative maintenance.
Yeah.
Which is, changing things out and servicing things at the normal, OE intervals.
Yeah.
And wind up with some harsh running vehicles, we need to be tuning our vehicles at the proper intervals.
Yep.
Replacing tires when they're due.
Yep.
Wiper fluid,
coolant.
If you got a leak or
yep.
anything of the sort.
Yep.
Little Rain-X will go a long way on the windshield, especially in these rainy seasons.
Yeah.
Stay up on all your codes that your engine's throwing. Don't neglect them. Or else they'll compact and compound and break your wallet.
That's right. That's right. So there's the avoidance of the finances they build up, right? You can't kind of get away from that. And then two, it's just like you're trying to avoid for the lack of the vehicle being there for you, right? So there's a sense of that too. But I think that the reason people neglect it is for all sorts of reasons. But there just becomes this mentality that it doesn't matter or it'll work out, right? But there's got to be an investment there just has to be.
If it ain't broke, don't fix it.
That's what a lot of people think, right?
Yeah, people have.
A lot of it is you do maintenance so that you can elongate the life of your vehicle.
That's right.
You,
yeah.
Right. And we've kind of gotten in a mindset to more recent years to just heavy lean on warranties, heavy lean on somebody else to do it. But there's a lot you can do yourself to help your wallet, either initially in a car purchase that you're paying for every month in your car payment, or in just taking ownership of the maintenance. It's a little bit of pain at different points in time to do maintenance rather than to delay, and like JJ was saying, creating compounding effects of tragic failure. So I think the point is our vehicles can go a lot farther than we think they can if we would care for them more regularly and take that to heart and make that part of our patterning with the vehicle. Basic life maintenance, like JJ mentioned from an OE perspective. Create a ritual in the spring and in the winter to get it ready for winter, right? With your vehicle or your assets, like Ray was talking about, motorhomes, motor vehicles, homes. You do the same thing if you're not in them, like cabins maybe that you do for hunting season and stuff like that. You gotta take care and prevent great damages, but also you gotta own the little pains to the wallet. The short-term losses that prevent big later tragic failure.
Basically, you're always paying for it in some way. You just kind of have more control over that payment if you will take ownership, in a sense, right? And we have the saying, you pay for what you get, kind of thing. That's just the truth. Like you buy something cheap, it's gonna break. You're gonna have to buy something else to replace it. So might as well buy something good and care for it well. And you're really getting more out of your money in a way. So we're trying to elongate life, not just avoid failure, but both are applicable, right? And how we maintain and care for the vehicle, right? So we talked a little bit about basics. I would probably say, apart from maybe novices, most people know a little bit about kind of what the basics are. I would say people like me, like most people like me, probably don't know a whole lot about like what goes into a tune-up. And this is like not the basics, but kind of more annual things you do. Or just kind of things to be aware of. And, people say, hey, you need a tune-up at $25,000 or $50,000 or whatever it is. And this is just not as common in, I think, the layperson's thought of vehicles. But it's also important if you want your vehicle to be elongated too. So what might go into, the care of the vehicle for even longer life by doing, tune-ups routinely, at least at certain junctures of mileage? What might be pieces that go into that, items that go into tune-ups that are important and effective for elongating vehicle life?
Well, that depends on the vehicle. When you look at, if you go back to the typical tune-up mindset, you're looking at spark plug wires, rotor button, rotor cap, points. It depends on how old you are. Exactly how far you go back. Those are the basics, that you're looking at as far as that goes. Maybe within a tune-up, there may be a carburetor clean or a fuel injection clean that's tied into what they consider a tune-up kind of thing, because tune-up covers more than just an ignition system. And a tune-up, is your fuel system, and anything tied to it. Those would be the basics. But as obviously as technology's gotten different, better, so forth and so on. Those things seem to last so much longer. And it's really not so much of a necessity until, sometimes vehicles get into the 100,000 mile range before they're even looking at putting spark plugs or in this particular case, instead of, spark plug wires, you have coil packs and you have, different things like that. But anytime you have something that is electronically controlled, it can fail at any point in time.
Moment,
So anytime you energize it, there's an opportunity for it to fail. So, and I think that's where the if it isn't broke, don't fix it mindset comes from with the technology nowadays. Back in the old days, the vehicle started running a little bit wonky. Time for a tune-up, or maybe doing a little adjustment on the carburetor kind of thing. It's just with what we've got going on with the technology today, it's working one day and the next day it's dead on the side of the road. There's not a lot of warning because everything is what it is. But like I said, it just depends on what era your car is what tune-up would encompass.
And on my newer vehicle, I'll give you the specs on it. Something I didn't realize is most car manuals that came with your vehicle open that up, and somewhere in it is a mileage replacement plan.
Right. Yep.
Like, just know that. And sometimes you can even, like, maybe on day one of owning that vehicle, when you're still excited about it, they have the programming in that vehicle. So on some of the newer vehicles, it just says, like, at this many miles, do this. At this many miles, program in that manual. Yeah. And then it'll beep for you and remind you when to do it. And so it's a preventative programming in a way of yourself to, like, I will not remember this at the time I need to remember this, but the car can help me do that. And that's one of the benefits of some of the newer, almost most of the vehicles I have that. Even, my truck from 2019 has had, I think what was, in my manual, things I missed, things like transmission fluid at 35,000 miles. Yeah. That's not one everyone thinks and even touches most of the time, because it needs to be done. Yeah, it needs to be done. It needs to be replaced. It needs to be flushed. Things like coolant. When's the last time you went and, drain the coolant, flush the system so that you can take care of cooling your engine, spark plugs was at 75,000 miles for me. And I did that probably a little late. Things that most of us do pretty good with is oil changes about every 5,000 miles, which varies depending on how much you drive, so I feel like the dates are always not a great indicator. Instead of letting it ride to 10, you look at engines that ran every 10,000 miles and every 5,000 miles on oil changes. That's good. There's a lot of debates we could even do about oil and what type of oil. OEMs recommend stuff that essentially helps them with gas mileage and EPA requirements, but there's things that are better for your engine and when to do that. And in certain seasons, like in summer, you can put in thicker oil, and then in winter you can put in the thinner oil. Both will help in different capacities due to temperatures and things like that. Just things as you gain in knowledge, you can care better for the vehicle. But like that maybe on the newer vehicles it's that, and then on the older vehicles it's a regular tune-up that helps you have more reliable firing on some of these classic cars. And I also think battery maintenance, if you're not an all-the-time driver, so that you're not we even sometimes will build those into vehicles so that it's just real easy to just plug in, so that you're maintaining the vehicle on the regular. I know people do that with their RVs as well. There's just stuff like that you can do to make sure that you're protecting your investment, all of it along the way. But I think it is helpful to look at these bigger, longer intervals and help yourself remember, keep a record of it. If you're into cars, I found that was a fun thing, is starting to like track all the things you do and at what time, what mileage, and what date. I've had my kids even start helping out, and so they started signing as the technician on the intervals, which is pretty cool to see. These are things I think that have been lost, unfortunately, with fathers and sons. Used to be a pastime, and we've kind of outsourced our lives a little bit. And so it's a good thing to pull back in. It'll connect you more with the vehicle. It'll help you enjoy driving, I think, more because of the work you put into that. You connect more with the vehicle. You have a good sense of ownership. So
that's great, Josh. And I love, again, kind of the application of, hey, let's rein that in a little bit. Let's spend time with the vehicle. Let's learn it. There's a manual. Read it. It might be helpful. Learn kind of where the mileage markers are. Learn how to care for the vehicle. And I like how you said that there should be, like if you still are excited about the car or have that kind of joy about it. That's kind of like the next question. It kind of segues well into that. Like, how can we consider maintenance? It sounds boring, but how can we consider that more as a joy instead of as a chore? And have a mindset that's more mature in how we approach the things that God gives us. And we know these are objects, are not living creatures. We know that, but they're part of what God provides to us. And we're called to steward, right? So how can we approach that with joy, and not just consider it a chore, though in a sense it is a chore? But how can we make it more than that?
Well, if you look at like it's something that you've been blessed with by the Lord, you want to take care of it.
You want to care for it. Yes. As a gift given to you instead of just something.
Something that you own, something that was yours, and that it's a hindrance to you to have to work on it. It's something that was given to you by the Lord, or you're managing it as stewards here on the earth. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Take a little more. a
little bit more pride in
into
it. Yeah, that's great, JJ. Anyone else? Just how can you kind of think of it more like, this is a joy I have. This is something that I'm glad to do. And so it's just a chore. It's just something to check off. Any other thoughts?
I think it's kind of like more of a. I mean, it's like a gratitude thing. I mean, kind of like what JJ was saying. Yeah. I mean, if you feel blessed to have what you have, no matter what it is.
Yeah.
It's easy. You think about it. It's easy for a guy that has, a beautiful Corvette sitting in his driveway to walk out and mess with it because it's got a cool factor to it, so forth and so on. But I mean, if you're in a situation with what you have is a Toyota Corolla or Toyota Camry, I mean, but you've still been blessed with that. You should still be grateful that you have it. I kind of look at my son and I roll my eyes sometimes at some of the things. He had a Ford Focus. That was his first car, and the paint on it wasn't great. It didn't have a lot of bells and whistles on it, all that good stuff. It was a $2,000 car. The guy was asking $3,000. I went and did work some magic, bought it for him for $2,000.
Wow.
And but within months of having it, I mean, he had worked his butt off and put wheels on it. He put a wing on it, and I mean, the car was always kept clean. Then he got the Dodge Dart, which once again is not it's not nothing special. I mean, but the car was always clean inside and out. He was always doing up things to upgrade, to do stuff on it. And now he drives a grocery getter, a 4-door Ford Taurus. But he loves the car. Yeah. I mean, he's just been so grateful to have whatever it is that he has.
Right.
That he just keeps them clean, and he's always under the hood, making sure that things are the way they need to be. And so the mindset of no matter what you have, if you need to be appreciative and proud of what you have, and maintain it and take care of it, because that's what you were blessed with.
One of the things, there's a couple of things, especially with this is. Before it was a chore for me, vehicles. I use them and consume them. We've become great consumers in the United States, and we've lost a lot of, art of self-reliance. And, I was in a, regular desk job, and my heart had failed me. Yeah. I mean, I just lost heart. And, Jesus turned to me and was like, it's time to buy that car. You want to, at the time I had taken great care of my truck that was a very used high mileage vehicle, because that's what I, could afford at the time. We were trying to be, fiscally conservative at the time. But I had upgraded all the little things. I had taken great care. That car, when it came to me, that truck when it came to me, and that truck when it left, I did the little inexpensive upgrades I could do to make a big difference in my personal experience with that vehicle. Things like the locks didn't work when I got it. My wife told me that was a big oversight on my part. So I went and fixed them. Small parts at O'Reilly's, that process of connecting with the vehicle, fixing it myself, swapping out pieces were some of my introductions into before I really took on a big project. But whenever I finally got in and made it my own, exactly like your son is doing, making it your own is thinking about a vehicle differently. And I think just adding creativity, taking ownership. We say here at C.A.R., like every problem is an opportunity for an upgrade. So let's say you get a flat tire, and you could go just replace like for like, and it could be a real hurt. Or how about those all-terrains? I mean, it would be a big difference, but make a slightly different choice. You're already going to be spending money. Make a slightly different choice that helps you be confident and not worry about your family in the winter season. Yeah. And maybe it's not a visually different thing, but maybe it's just you have made that vehicle better than what the OEM gave you. Yeah. OEMs cut a lot of corners to make profit, and you have an opportunity to go back and make something your own and add creativity to it. And when the Lord opened up the door for me to add a bunch of creativity to my own vehicle, all of a sudden it became a lot of fun. Yeah. And I think the last thing to do is make it a family affair. Yeah. Let's get the kids back out helping you. It will take longer. Yeah. It is harder. You do need to focus on it. However, if you'll sacrifice that time for them, you'll start to get really good experiences. And I would say, up until just now, this last time I changed the oil on our vehicles, it was very hard having the kids help. They were just not much help. But something shifted all of a sudden, and it was so rewarding and so much more fun bringing them into that experience with me and being able to teach them and guide them. And they had so much enjoyment from it. It made the chore an experience. Yeah. And I think that was just really great. I love seeing, I'm like, I see men whose sons are just so capable and they're like really young. And I'm like, wow, what did you do? Well, they involved them. Yeah, they involved them much earlier than I did. And so I'm catching up. Yeah. But, I love that. I love seeing that. I love making it more of a family affair. It makes, my dad did that, taught me things that I've never forgotten, about vehicles. And so I think it's just important we do that and pass that on to the next generation. They're not getting so computerized that you can't do some things, but I also think it opens up the door to reevaluate the cars we have today and say, hey, is it something I can work on? I've got a lot of friends that are trading in their brand new trucks for older trucks and saying, I just want to be able to work on that thing. I want to get something reliable that I can work on and I can replace the engine and I can keep doing that. And the net cost of it is so much lower because costs of cars have gotten so high that it's a really smart thing to do. Now it's back in your hands and the enjoyment can fully kind of come back into your ability to do it and lower the overall cost of a vehicle for your family. So I love that I'm seeing that. I love that I'm seeing it with the younger generation in different ways with modifications, body kits, stuff that they do that is really cool when you go to these Cars and Coffee and things like that. So just making it your own, adding creativity and making it a family affair, I think really transforms chores.
That's awesome. Yeah, I love that because again, I think the joy is something that should be lasting. And like you're saying, you can go beyond just the maintenance, and the investment part can really, I think, increase joy in what you're doing. And I love the part where you're saying invite others in to that, especially in your own family. I mean, that's a really good point and encouraging. I mean, that's certainly what God does. That's what He does. He invites us into what He's doing. That's exactly what He's all about. We'll segue a little bit. We're talking about maintenance and obviously a little bit more than that today. But I thought it'd be good for us to think about spiritually, what does that look like in our lives too? And to kind of break it down, there's a passage that's, I think, helpful for us to kind of see this. And it kind of brings in knowledge and training, kind of like maintenance does. There's a little bit of knowledge you have to have. There's like practicing, doing it, repetitiveness, ritual, you said. There's some of these things that also carry over as parallels in the spiritual life. And so I thought this would be a helpful practice for us to kind of work through. And there's really multiple practices. We call them spiritual disciplines. But Hebrews 5 says this, "For though by this time you ought to be teachers, you need someone to teach you again the basic principles of the oracles of God. You need milk, not solid food. For everyone who lives on milk is unskilled in the word of righteousness, since he is a child. But solid food is for the mature, for those who, by their powers of discernment, have trained in constant practice to distinguish good from evil." That was really hopeful. Great important verse there. A passage there to kind of put together what does spiritual habits look like? Well, the writer kind of distinguishes two groups of habits, right? First, there's like basic principles of God's word, and that's kind of practicing those things, and those are for spiritually, smaller, younger, in a sense, the novices, drinking milk is kind of what it says, babies in a sense. We're not talking about age, we're talking about spiritual maturity. So they're infants in a way, or babes in spiritual life. The writer calls them spiritual kids, right? And then there's the second group over here, practicing what's beyond the basics, and it compares them to those that are spiritually mature, that are eating solid food. And so the issue here is not, interestingly enough, it's not, hey, leave the basics behind and then kind of get on with this. It's you've learned the basics, you've practiced them so well that you've moved on. The problem for these Christians is that they forgot the basics. It's not that they left them, it's like they stopped doing them. See, so the issue there is they've stopped practicing. Now they can't help anybody else. And they need someone to help them again to get back to the basics. So it's kind of interesting when you think about that. You don't say, hey, I'm going to go do these really cool things with the car and then forget to do the oil. You know what I mean? So like, see how those things relate together, these spiritual disciplines in kind of two groups, I think basics and kind of beyond the basics. So I thought we could kind of finish by talking about this a little bit, kind of as we parallel this. What are the basics of just maintaining a healthy Christian life? And, what creeps in to really cause us to neglect that, or I think even more importantly, treat it like a chore when it is not a chore, right? And these, when we practice these things, they're supposed to help us talk to God and walk with God, right? So really, what are the basics of the Christian life that allow us to walk and talk with God and grow with Him? And what happens when we neglect these things? What are the basics of spiritual living with God, the milk?
Repentance.
Yeah.
Time with God.
Yes.
Getting in His Word and meditating on His Word with Him. Regularly. Spending time in the Spirit.
Yeah, that's great, JJ. I love how you said there's a regular repentance to have with God, and man, that's a really good one. A lot of people overlook that. There's a great book I read a number of years ago that said, you end the day by not just thanking God, but confessing your sin to God. You've got to get regular about flushing the things out that are wrong in your life too. You can't let that build up. It's dangerous, right? So there's a repentance, and that's not a chore, that's a grace. That God would even let you say, I'm sorry. That God would even let you come to Him again. Can you imagine like when someone fails you 25 times in one day, but God's so kind, He let you come back to Him, right? So there's a grace there, but that's a practice, like you're saying, and then reading the Word, being in the Spirit. Those are great, JJ. Anyone else? What are some spiritual practices that need to be regular, basic things?
I think if you kind of parallel our conversation we've had up until this point, I would break it into two phases, right? And exactly like they were saying is, okay, you have basic car maintenance. These are the things you got to do. These are like the basics, what it says in the manual, like these are the requirements of ownership to get what the manufacturer is, promising you. It's very similar in the church to, I would say, the disciplines, like we just, JJ just talked about, regular repentance, reading of your word. It says in the New Testament, salvation is the basic thing. So if your church is only talking about salvation over and over and over, they're basically offering milk. And there are levels to churches, and God does that. He creates open doors, and some churches are purposed to open the door for people's hearts, and there are other churches that will help you understand the deeper things of God. And people move through those phases. But the first would be maintenance, right? And in the kingdom, that's like, hey, I'm in. Wait, I'm like, my sin is gone, and like I can be in, I'm orienting to the surroundings, and I've got some basic patterns or habits of life that I need to develop to help me stay away from sin so I can have an opportunity to get close to God. Now that second piece is, we talk about the cars, we were talking about actually investing so much more time and energy and real investment into a car to make it your own, to have a relationship with that vehicle. We name our vehicles, like it has an identity and it has experiences and it has deep investment. And so there is a connection there. And same thing with God. Relationship is the deeper things of God, and it's an eternal well that never ends. It's not like, oh man, I'm going to figure out how to talk to God and I've reached the reality. I am now a Christian, there's this thing the enemy tries to keep making and moving that fence post. Let's not forget the initial and basic things of God, and let's move on to the deeper things, which is understanding the deep waters, or how deep the rabbit hole goes with God, where you can understand His infinite self. And that I think that these angels are going around saying holy, holy, holy around His throne, and I like to think that they are constantly seeing a new facet of God that is blowing their mind and saying, wow, you are so set apart. Whoa, you are so set apart. Whoa, again, because it is an infinite and ongoing a depth that it will take eternity to understand. And so that's actually a very encouraging thing, because it's never going to get boring. You continually discover new exciting things forever. But those are the deeper things of God. Those are the relationship things. Those are the things where you have sacrificed time in your life, or your mindset, or your money, or whatever it is, and you have invested in the kingdom of God, and you've invested in your relationship with the Father. And that is what Jesus came to reveal. And we most of the time don't make it out of the basic maintenance stages, just like, people in their cars. There's a very few people that are in a car community that have learned about the deeper joys of vehicles.
Yeah.
In the same way, there's a very few people in the church that have learned about the deeper joys of spending time with God. Yeah. And so I think to get to that deeper, the deeper things of maintenance or the deeper parts of understanding, it calls to relationship.
Yeah. And, I think, again, the goal is the proximity that we have with God, right?
Yeah.
It's to get close to Him, right? It's to, if you have His ear, it's to listen to Him, right? The goal is to be close to God. The goal is not just to have God, though that's wonderful and joyful in itself, right? Mm-hmm. So it's really proximity, right? That's kind of the goal of relationship, right? Closeness.
Moving from servant to sonship.
Yeah. Deepening relationship, furthering relationship, growing closer in relationship. And again, that's going from servant to friendship and to sonship, and those things the Bible says are very available to those who desire that with God and will pursue Him. But it does take practice. It's just not something that's automatic, right? Now, on the other side of it, the writer talks about, hey, there's some danger of neglecting these things, right? I mean, if you're not, he literally scolds them. He says, you should be further along by now. Mm-hmm. So these weren't new Christians. These were people going to church for a while. He's like, you should be further along. You should be telling people how to do this. But now I got to go back and open your mouth again and feed you milk. He kind of scolds them. So the danger here is we can start to neglect the basics. Yeah. So what happens when we neglect the basics on a spiritual level? What happens to vehicles? People show up and got all their lights on, engine lights coming on and everything, right? What happens spiritually when we neglect the basics? Not the deeper things, but the basic things. What do you all think? What happens when we do that?
Life falls apart.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
It's the same thing. I mean,
it's exactly the same thing.
It totally falls apart.
You're looking towards a breakdown.
That's right.
I mean, there's your vehicle works off of that maintenance, and you work off of that maintenance as well.
Yeah.
And one of the things that you had asked earlier, Ross, about what is it? What's the parallels, and then what keeps us from being able to do? And it's the same thing there too.
Yeah.
I mean, we just get so busy in life.
Yeah.
We work so many hours. We have so many hours that we intend to spend with your spouse or your family, those kind of things, and recreation. Things that are so much, and in a lot of people's minds, so much easier to do. Yeah. I mean, if you think about it, when you have to go out and you have to pop the hood, you have to have the right tools, you have to have the parts to work on the car. And that's the same thing whenever, you sit down to spend time with the Lord. You've got to make sure you've got the right material.
That's right, man.
You've got the right mindset. You've got the right tools. Right. You've got the right parts. And it takes effort.
That's right.
And we've all been guilty of it, I'm sure, that, you get home from work, you're dead tired, you don't want to work on the car, and you don't want to open your Bible either.
That's right.
You just want to veg. You just want to, whatever it is that you find that is, and it should be that, but whatever you find that is enjoyable or soothing or relaxing for you is what you choose to do.
It takes the place of
correct.
Replaces that, right?
And that's why the Lord calls for us to fast. Yep. To get away from those things that we're relying on for that peace, that comfort, that gratification, whatever it is, and turn to Him. Yeah. Eliminate those. And it's the same thing that you have to do, unfortunately, with your vehicles.
Yep.
It gets to a point where you can either choose to do it or you have to do it.
Right.
And unfortunately in life, it's with people that are walking with the Lord, when it becomes a have to situation, is typically whenever they've gotten themselves in a breakdown situation. They're stranded, just like they would be on the side of the road with their car.
And I think what you're saying is that there is a lot of parallel to these things, and I love how you said this, Ray, is that there is a knowledge piece to this, right? Like, you have to have the right materials, right? It's not just any content. You have to have the right content, right? You have to kind of be engaged and near those things, right? but then it's also the practice of it. You've got to do it, right? So again, it's like you can think about something, consider it, but until you commit to it, you're not engaging with it. And the danger in the passage is these people knew what to do, they never did it.
Yeah.
It was an issue of ritual. It was an issue of practice. It wasn't an issue of knowledge with them, right? And so there's a lot of neglect that happens in the Christian life that leads to breakdown, right? Pastors say this all the time, but your crisis that you fall into is like a slow process of falling into it, right? It's not always sudden, right? It typically happens when you neglect the spiritual practices, right? When you stop praying, when you stop reading the Bible, when you stop going to church, right? And people make everything in the Christian life, like you're saying, Josh, about salvation. Salvation is certainly absolutely crucial for our lives, right? But the goal of that is relationship, right? So the goal is not salvation, like some kind of transaction. The goal is relationship with God. And if you think it's just getting this thing and then you move on, well, the reality is you're probably going to fall off a cliff immediately, right? I mean, it's just the reality of it. So I think, again, there's this sense of we can't say, I want to go on to the deeper things if you're not practicing the basic things. And if you neglect those basic things, it can ruin your life. Now, the good news is the writer says later on, he's like, I have hope for better things for you, which is encouraging. He's like, for you, I know better things are coming, which is good. So I think we can maybe end on that by saying, hey, what are some ways that we can say, hey, if we are practicing these basics and we're not neglecting them, right? We kind of take that as an assumption. What are some ways that we can keep getting closer to God, knowing the better things to come? There's good things for us out there that go from maintenance, like say, going from have to I get to do these things with God, right? What might be some ways we can practice, like when we talk about tune-ups for old cars, what might be some really good tune-ups for our lives spiritually that really kind of accelerate the intimacy with God, the closeness with God. I would say it goes beyond, but enhances the basics of our spiritual life. Who might want to chime in about that? We'll finish with that today.
I think a couple of just tools I've learned. One of them is, I think if you don't know about John Eldridge and Stacy Eldridge's ministries, and then let me include all of the offshoots, that's, Band of Brothers, that's True North, those are other groups those are what I would call like a full engine overhaul.
Yeah.
If you are in the catastrophic failure state, or you are in a point of awakening to the Lord, those are the best place to orient to your new life. Yeah. Right. And then walk on a journey to get equipped with, I think, tools. It's like going, I love Harbor Freight. So it's like going to Harbor Freight and getting all the tools you need as a mechanic to start working. Yeah. You really can't, without the proper tools, without the weapons of war, you will not survive, and you're not going to be you're going to be disoriented and feel very helpless in what you are looking at and doing and dealing with. Yeah. So most people don't take that step. That's like a full overhaul. And then I think another major tool is Sozo, or it's out of Bethel. They have some training on it. There's other people that do it, but it's basically like an inventory of the damages to your life that have happened, and having help. And you could do this just through counseling, right? And I would recommend Christian counseling, but orient it in a place where God can come and heal it, because counseling is so helpful. But Christian counseling, now you have the great physician in the room, and you can do some real work, right? It's like the difference between surgery and primary care.
That's right.
Both are helpful, but one, it gets down to real work, right? And it gets, can really pull out the root of a problem. And so I think those are some things I've learned that are like, okay, overhaul state. Yeah. But if, for someone just beginning, I was not saved by a pastor in a church to guide me. I was in a drunk tank. So how did I, the best advice I got was get into the Word and read it from cover to cover. Understand what you are really believing. And then get a guide. At the time it was Ross. I would come to his little kitchen table, and I drove it 2 hours every weekend and got oriented. Tell me how to read this. I had a little sheet full of questions, and I would just ask all these questions that the hard stuff. I didn't skip over the stuff that I disagreed with, or I had to come to understanding, and then truly orienting yourself quickly to the Word of God. But then the Word of God is supposed to point you to a relationship with God. It's supposed to tell you what's available. Okay, so if we talk about what we were saying earlier, about, there's levels to this, but it's kind of like you go to a baseball game and, you get your ticket and you get in. That's salvation. Okay. So just getting in the gate is not the point of the thing. You got salvation so that you could watch the game, but then you find out that your favorite player, the star player of that team, is taking autographs for kids, and you have your family there, and you realize you can go and meet your hero. Now, that is truly the gospel, is that there's an opportunity to meet the hero. The game was not the point. Going to church and being part of a church community is not the point. The point is that you get to meet your hero. Yeah. And if you miss that opportunity, before the game starts, or you miss that opportunity in the whole thing, what are you doing? Right. Everyone would look at you and say, "Hey, did you not go and get to meet your hero?" They were signing autographs at this time, and he's taking time to sit and speak with these people. Yeah. That would be the opportunity. Now, in heaven, the opportunity is relationship with Jesus. Yeah. It's not just the game, or the life or the Christian walk. That's necessary to meet with Jesus. That's right. So the point is relationship. And as fast as you can get to a point where you can hear from God and really have guides that can walk you through that, the riches of the kingdom are in his words to you. And we all long for that. If you feel a hole in your heart, it's because you are longing for that. Mm-hmm. There is nothing else that will ever fill that void except for that thing. Mm-hmm. And then if you do not have it, you're missing the point. Yeah. And so fight for it, grab someone by the hem of their garment and try to get it. Try to learn from them, try to garner, because those are the riches of life. Yeah. And so I think, back to car maintenance, it's like, there are some deeper things, some great joys. And it's probably like building a vehicle start to finish and seeing it revving for the first time and really realizing the fullness of it. But in the kingdom, it's much bigger than a car. Yeah. It's much more fulfilling. It's much more about you. Yeah. And so
it's kind of like what I always think about when it comes to like these practices that are so important is it's about proximity. It's not about checking a box. It's not about completing a task. That's not the Christian life. That's running a treadmill. Okay, that's not what God's getting after. If we will do these things, it helps us in our weakness, our sinfulness, our ignorance to get closer to him. It helps us get near him. Doesn't mean he's not near, but it helps us in proximity. Yeah. It's a lot like that scene in I love the Lion King movie, and it's a lot like that scene where Mufasa, the father, takes the son to the edge of the kingdom and shows him the whole kingdom. Yeah, like that's kind of what God's asking us to do. Like follow him, look at what is ours. Yeah, follow me, look at this. Instead, we're like running around somewhere else. Like that's really what he's wanting here. It takes practice. It takes learning to listen to him. Obedience to him, getting away. We do retreats from time to time because of the noise of this life. There's things that'll help us get closer, marriage retreats, things like this. These things are hopeful, but all of that's for proximity. Like Josh, you said, like at the game, like, yeah, I guess you could spend $5 and go to the nosebleeds. I mean, those are the worst seats. Mm-hmm. Like the point of the Christian life is to get the best seat, is to get the closest, and there is an availability to that too. You can be close to the Lord, right? There's 12 disciples, and then he had 3 in that 12, right? Mm-hmm. So there is a sense of proximity that can be, again, it's a sense, do we want to get closer to God? You know what I mean? In the end, there are a lot of people who come to church and like sitting in the nosebleeds, like they're content with that. And they think they're close to God, but they're not, but they're there, but the goal is like the people that are enjoying it the most at the front. They're the ones that love it the most. So I think this sense of this proximity that we have to God is so important, but it takes practice. It takes these disciplines. And sometimes they can become have-tos, but ultimately they'll become joys if we practice them well enough, because again, it's close to God, I think. So guys, I appreciate you taking the time this morning, because I really think there's some rich parallels that are practical in how we take care of vehicles, but also really important spiritually, and how God cares for our heart and fathers us and leads us too. So I thought we'd finish with this verse. I love this verse. My favorite verses on spiritual discipline and closeness to God. This is what Peter says in 2 Peter 1, 5-8. For this very reason, make every effort to supplement your faith with virtue, and virtue with knowledge, and knowledge with self-control, and self-control with steadfastness, steadfastness with godliness, godliness with brotherly affection, and brotherly affection with love. For if these qualities are yours and are increasing, they keep you from being ineffective and unfruitful in the knowledge of the Lord Jesus Christ. So notice he's saying, if you'll practice this, you'll never be unfruitful. If you'll practice this, you'll always be effective. If you don't practice this, you neglect these things, you become unfruitful and ineffective. And you'll lose that proximity in a sense too. But I love how he's saying, notice the practice is part of that relationship there. So thank you, men, for joining us this morning. And thank you if you're listening this morning to our 8th episode here on season 2 of our podcast. And again, want to encourage you to check out our website, crossautomotiveroyale.com, to learn about business inquiries, anything that you have when it comes to custom building and custom restoration work, or partnerships in our ministry. We have many ministry opportunity partnerships, from car donation to a car clinic work, to just partnering in Christian life together as a business and with churches as well. So hope you'll check that out and leave a comment and subscribe to our podcast as well. Until next episode, signing off.